Stuart, welcome. Thanks for joining me. We're here to talk about experimentation centers of excellence. Introduce yourself and the org and your context and where you come from.
Sure, nice, Ben. Thanks for having me on. So I'm Stewart Ehoff. I head up experimentation at RS Group PLC. We're a FTSE 100 distributor of electrical components, widgets, thingamabobs, and whatchamacallits. Um, yeah, I've been in the company for 5 years. We've not always been a center of excellence. We've kind of gone on this evolved journey from a centralized team to a center of excellence. And yeah, just here today to talk more about that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to get into, that journey. My first question is establishing baseline, establishing context. And so where are you now? How would you articulate your current state of the center of excellence slash centralization? In my experience, there's a lot of like hybrid situations. A lot of centralized experimentation programs, are aspire to be centers of excellence and are trying to do
Mhm.
that. Give me some bullet points on just where you are now. Yeah, just let's start there.
Yeah, so I would say we're in current position we're a center of excellence with, I guess, some soft line support into the squads and the product teams that we work with, because I think it's very difficult to go from that fully centralized team where you do everything to just kind of giving away the keys to the city to everyone else and just be like, okay, now you do everything, right? That's just a real harsh transition to just like, from day yesterday to day today. It's like you can't just cut through that. So I would say we're a good portion through that transition. We The Center of Excellence is kind of a global recognized business function across the organization. So we work within the EMEA, the APAC, and the Americas regions, and all experimentation is kind of governed by our practices, using the same tools, the same technologies, the same processes. All experiments are kind of recorded in a central operating system and database where we can see it all. But members of my team kind of support more intimately with some of the squads within our business who are experimenting. Right now, their goal is not to be kind of like first line support within those squads. They're there to kind of go through a process of taking most squads from like 0 to 1 experiments. That's like goal number one, and then helping them to scale and kind of loosen the reins off with those squads as they get better at experimentation. And the idea is that over time we build squads that are fully autonomous with experimentation, that maybe touch base with us around particular challenges they're having, or specific experiment kind of consulting to an extent. So we're a fair way through that process. Some teams in the business we work intimately with, some we work less so with.
Let me poke a little bit about that. I'm curious about the journey that you got there. But before I ask you about the journey, your central team, you're providing, I would say, second line support, so to speak, in
Yeah.
some ways, as you describe it. Um, is your centralized team also, I'm curious about metrics and swim lane ownership. Does your centralized team also own a particular swim lane? Are you responsible
No.
for a particular metric on that? Yeah. So that's a big leap, I think. So
Yeah.
let's transition that, use that as like, talk to me about the journey to get where you are, especially around there. Like, when did you step out? When did that centralized team
Hmm.
step out into the center of excellence role and not have the hat of like a goal metric ownership, rather like in theory, the center of excellence has got the hub and spoke model where everyone else has got kind of some product metric ownership and revenue goals and such like that. So talk to
Yeah.
me about the journey over this last year. What How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably been more than a year. I would say it's probably been about a 3 year journey to get to where we are today. The two key aspects are really around process and technology, and I think they're very much intertwined in kind of looking back and when we were a centralized team to where we're now a center of excellence and kind of how we got there. So um, casting back to like 3, maybe 4 years ago, as a business, we had a centralized experimentation team that was running tests end to end. We had developers, designers, analysts, and we were just doing everything within our own team. Um, but we quickly realized that within those tests, it's like we're driving a level of velocity that's probably about 5% in totality of compared to the rest of the stuff that the business is shipping, right? And the things that we're driving through tests aren't always kind of connected to the broader product strategy, the product goals, the roadmaps, and things like that. So as a totality of things we ship as a business, 5% of them are tests, 95% of them are not tests, right? We're just kind of guessing. So the only way that you really get under the skin of that and you drive that is to make testing the default operating method for how you ship stuff. And you can only do that if you have a process that enables teams to leverage experimentation easily as part of their day-to-day work. And then the underlying technology that then enables you to kind of embed experimentation within product and engineering teams, right? So our journey's really kind of looked at those two facets. Moving from kind of an internal managed kind of client side tool to a server side tool was a big step there from a technology perspective. But then putting all the process and the governance around how product squads can actually use experimentation to drive their goals, drive towards their goals faster, with more evidence and kill stuff that doesn't work. That was the whole process and almost a bit of the cultural aspects that we've kind of cut through as well. So I think those are the two main kind of bullets. If I was to say, how do you migrate there? What does that look like? We started slow. We kind of started with one squad while still kind of keeping the centralized team running in the way that it was. We kind of tried the approach with one squad, and then we sort of navigated through that, taking the learnings on board to where I think we're working with about 12 different squads across the business with this model now, and there is no centralized model at all. Like my team does not come up with test ideas. We don't build tests. We don't ship stuff. All of the experiment velocity within our business is driven through the product teams who own profit and loss and who own metrics and goals, right?
Yeah, so that's awesome. Your answer there transitioned me into even the next question, which just digs at getting more specifics, like 2 to 3 milestones, like rituals, artifacts, to be called out that are important. You mentioned server-side tooling. You mentioned a process to make it faster. There's a bit of a cultural element there. But I want to poke you a little bit more for some specifics there. And I'll help you like kind of categorize this kind of stuff a little bit. There is some sort of blueprints out there, not Spiro blueprints, but other blueprints from like Lucas Ramirez published an article that speaks to like this experimentation hub. It has at its core two key areas. One is like what he calls the center of excellence, which has the primary goal of like education and training, right? So this is like one big component, and then the second one is more around like the product side of this COE. Like the data, the tooling, maybe even like the processing and the process governance, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned like the data and tooling and process, but talk to me maybe about specifics like 2 or 3 key milestones or rituals around like the training and how you're helping those 12 different squads, like the training and education side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've kind of built a bit of an internal program of material and I guess it's almost like a refined process of like as we take an experiment like a squad that's never done any experimentation from that 0 to 1 point, and you're talking to potentially product squads who don't even know what experimentation is, they don't know what A/B testing is, they don't know what statistics are. How do you take that team from that 0 to 1 step, right? And I'm a big believer that you try and just do that through relentless speed and do things as fast as possible, break stuff along the way, and you catch up on that as you kind of go through. It's like, oh, we broke that bit. Let's figure that bit out. We've kind of honed this and done this 12 plus times now. So we've almost built akin to kind of the blueprint. So you've got a step-by-step, paint by numbers onboarding process I mean, it may not work for other businesses, but at least in the context of our business, it works in terms of going through that education program. So real high level, like what is experimentation? Why is it important for our business? What's the value that it brings? How do we operate as a center of excellence? Because sometimes like when you're engaging with, and this was kind of an early on piece, right? People can get a bit defensive, right? In some respects, it's like, oh, you're coming in to kind of help me to, like, we're coming in to help people, right? But if you don't do that in the right way, it can be seen as a little bit of a, oh, you're trying to take away my stuff or you're trying to take away my product. So it's like how you actually position yourself in terms of helping others and helping them to achieve their goals and putting things into context of, the existing roadmaps. And then there is that technology and kind of data side, right? So all of that is down to a T, but some of the key artifacts and rituals that we pull out of that onboarding process is what we call a experimentation framework. And that's almost like a contractual agreement between the center of excellence and the product squad that says, here's the top priorities for this squad. Here are the metrics that we're going to use to assess our success. And then underneath that, here are some of the strategies that we might employ that helps us to go after those metrics, right? So we'll have a framework, and that
Mm,
framework then feeds an ideation session and a process of data investigation and crafting tactics underneath that that then says, okay, now here's the things we're actually going to do that's going to drive the strategy that drives the metrics, right? Those are real key setting pieces that if we go into a squad engagement without those, everything just falls apart, right? Because there's no kind of joined up agreement. We're not clear on the goals, we're not clear on the metrics, and we're also not clear on like the responsibilities and the accountabilities. So that last artifact, and there's others that I can definitely talk to, but that last artifact is a bit of a racy, right? So who actually
mm.
does what in this ecosystem? Who's responsible at particular points of the experiment process? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? Who should we be consulting? Who should we be talking to? What does that look like? And then, when you're pulling all these different people together across a squad, everyone knows where they stand at different parts of the process and where they add value and where they can perhaps step away.
That's fascinating. We've got a Spiro blueprint on a experimentation program RASI, and we've got another Spiro blueprint on an experimentation strategic road plan, like that is a little bit of an OKR structure. And what you just explained there is your framework, so to speak, like the contract. I love how you language that. Is kind
Mhm.
of you brought in those two concepts almost like as the same thing. And so I want to dig in with you on that later. Maybe we can pull out an example, add it to the footnotes here, so to speak, for everyone else to see. I'll definitely reference those two blueprints that I just, I'll add the links there to the footnotes, so to speak. But that's awesome. So last question here. Going forward, any planned adjustments, any scaling, like you are where you are right now with regards to it, from this conversation, I think the audience is going to say like, wow, this seems like really mature. Like this seems like a
Yeah.
proper COE, right? We all know that, every organization is their own version of a dumpster fire, right? Like, so I'm sure you've got your own kind of problems and issues and freckles, so to speak. Like, talk to me about
Yeah.
those. Like, what are your struggles now, and where are you planning to go with regards to the scaling of this COE?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges that comes to mind right now is that uh, although we have that kind of center of excellence approach and we're moving in second line support, most of the analysis for tests is still done by my team, right? And that's because we don't really have the organizational structure within our product squads. Our product squads don't have like dedicated analysts, for example. So we're almost organizationally not in a position where we can kind of federate out the full end-to-end process of experimentation to a squad because we are still a little bit of a key dependency, well, not a little bit, a lot of a key dependency on that analysis stage. And that's not it's not by my design. I don't want it to be that way. We'd very much love for the squads to have their own analyst capability and resource and to be able to drive that autonomously. But we are where we are, right? From a kind of broader operating model and organizational structure perspective. So we're currently looking at kind of how do we scale through that? How do we manage the near term capacity of a business that's kind of on a 4x velocity curve? And that's challenging in of itself, while also making sure we're thinking about that future model around, it's not just about our team, right, in the center of excellence and how we operate, but it's also about the broader organization at large and how we construct our squads, how we align them around metrics or customer problems or transient kind of horizontal journeys. And so those are some of the aspects that we're still stepping through today. That if we can get that right, that'll really help with that continued scale.
Nice, cool. Yeah, thanks, Stuart. The last piece I want to do, and you notice my pause there real quick for a potential cut, which I can cut that out.
Yeah.
The last piece I want to do is potentially screen share. No, I don't know if I want to do this, man. Like, so that cut was cool, and I might like ask you to say like thank you here in a second, so I can like bring
Yeah.
that back in.
Th-
But like,
There
what?
is there is one thing on the board because I think one thing that's really interesting to comment on around is in the blueprint that you shared with me on the Miro board, you have experimentation specialist as one role that kind of supports kind of individual product squads or teams or what have you. In our business, that's actually two roles. So we have experimentation specialists who are kind of more product focused type people who have really good communication skills, stakeholder management skills. They've got some product experience, but they're also experimentation experts within their own right. And then we have experimentation analysts who are the data people, right? So they look after the technology, the data quality. They run AA tests, they analyze tests, they evaluate guardrail metrics, and they ensure that the end reporting that we do from a kind of a meta-analysis perspective on our overall program is sound, right? So we kind of made this decision a while ago to split this out into two roles, which might be a bit of a hot take or a bit unconventional. But I think finding one person who can do all of that within a single role is really difficult. They do exist. I know they exist because I know many of them, but they're kind of unicorns, right? By and large, if you want to kind of scale this, I think having almost a separation of concerns between a set of individuals within a center of excellence that onboard, educate, and drive value, kind of almost similar to the model that you referenced earlier that Lucas shared. You then have people on kind of the other side of the coin, which are looking after the data quality, the output of the program, some of the process aspects as well, and then the actual analysis of experiments. So yeah, I think it was a really interesting aspect of your model that I just wanted to call out is a bit different for us at RS.
Yeah, and this is what you're saying right here, and I'm screen sharing to you're saying like the education ambassador side of things, and then the kind of the product, the technical process side of things.
Yeah.
Is that fair to put it right here?
Yeah, to an extent, I think the left hand side is kind of product, and I would say the right hand side is more analysis, technical data, program reporting, ROI, those types of aspects. I think it's just worth saying as well, like there's no one size fits all solution for how you kind of build your team and how you build your center of excellence. I think this is just largely a consequence of where I see kind of capability in the market and ability to hire roles in kind of with a bit more of a discrete focus as opposed to that broader aspect where you bring someone in that could do all of this, but they might be stretched a little bit thin on some aspects, right?
Yeah, so just to share where that is here, like this is the what I meant alluded to with regards to what Lucas is building over at Vista and published an
Yeah.
article on there, and I've got that link right here where you give he's calling the Center of Excellence that sort of the ambassador, the education, he's an ambassador
Mm.
program, second line support. So this might be some of the product as you put it, whereas like the experimentation product development, right? That's why I used that word product maybe, and you didn't. So it's like just a language
Yeah,
game there. Library, data, experimentation management, reporting, technical support.
for
So you can see
sure.
that really like it aligns, I think, perfectly with what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. This is it's a very similar setup, kind of by accident actually, but I think you're right. The vernacular and how what we call stuff might be different, but overall the ethos is kind of the same.
Yeah, and you could tell he's got more here, and I do have him penned to do a series on to do an interview here, and maybe he'll share a little bit more of what's going on outside of this box. And
Yeah.
he's got a great article on this, building a culture of experimentation, Vista DNA. So, well, cool. And just for the viewers, I'm putting together a series of these interviews, asking a series of COE rock stars like Stewart a set of these questions on what they're doing and what they're up to. And the backdrop is kind of centers of excellence, how they work, related to some of the blueprints. We talked about the RASI. Here's that one here. I've got other related blueprints that are available, meeting cadence, for example, engagement mechanisms, and then other resources. I'm going to interview uh, Sidhant, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name here, at Hulu as well. There's a really good article on kind of top challenges for experiments that goes into this is 2019 that goes into like building of centers of excellence, IBM case study, and then I really like the Farfetch document on how they built their program as well. And so these resources are meant to provide a kind of a backdrop. I've got Stuart's interview here. Thank you, Stuart. I'll put the video here as well, and I'll slowly start to build this thing out. And so as I do conduct these interviews, it'll start to build out, and we'll have a repository for ourselves and for others, and hopefully kind of a bunch of related content on this, and we'll all get smarter and figure this thing out, solve it, and put it behind us, right?
Yeah, for
So,
sure, for sure. Really good to really keen to hear some of those other interviews and kind of build a bit on the collective knowledge of how teams kind of set themselves up and how they drive themselves forward with their kind of organizational setup for success. It can feel a little bit ethereal sometimes, and I think one of the most common questions that I hear being asked kind of speakers on stage, or that I get asked when I do occasionally get on stage, maybe not as much as others, is, well, how is your team set up? How are you creating a center of excellence? What does that look like? I think it's a bit of an ethereal topic, so
mhm.
really cool that you're cutting through that and just getting in front of people and asking them, what does it look like?
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks, Stuart. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Ben. Cheers.